All right, everybody, if you'll have a seat, we're getting ready to get started. Harry McIntosh. Harry, you haven't changed in 40 years. You're still talking during the meeting. Yeah. Salesmanship begins when the customer says no. It's not on? Hello, everybody. We're getting ready to get started. Well, I got to tell you, this is a family reunion. Welcome. We're all here to celebrate Dad's life and each other. Today we're brought together to pass on a legacy left to us. It is a legacy of faith, family, and work. Dad lived a God-centered life. A Christian-centered life consists of 5 key elements: growing, serving, gifting, attending, and connecting. And just by the reception we've had here today, he's left us all with that. One of Dad's lessons that I learned was I can control 3 things daily: the amount of time that I could devote to doing something, what I did with that time, and the attitude I did it with. Likewise, our lives consist of 3 things: the day we are born, the day we die, and all the days in between. We cannot control the day we are born, not necessarily control the day we die, but he showed us how to live all those days in between. Dad taught us that it was work that gave us that ability. How we live the in-between days are how we remembered, it's our legacy to pass on. With what Dad taught us to support our family and our faith, we here are a part of his family, his work, and his faith. Each of us can relate to what Dad's belief in these 3 elements had on our own lives. For our family, our personal family, everything we are today is because Dad and Mom both lived that faith, evidenced by all of us being at his side through the end. They lived that family, evidenced by all of you here today. And the work element, evidenced by all they were able to do for his beloved family, his beloved friends, and his beloved University of Dayton. Today, we invite each of you to celebrate what it meant to each of you. Jim Johnson. Oh, there he is. Jim, why don't you would hide behind me. It's the only place to get away. Jim's going to start off everything with a song, and it's wonderful. Thank you, Jim.
Put the weight on my shoulders. Take the load off your mind. 'Cause the headwinds that blow will fade away in time. Rest yourself on my waters. Take the lifeline from me. Rise above what has passed and let yourself be free. I only know what love must do. Through laden times, I'll follow you. And when you're down, I'll break the fall. 'Cause the weight on my shoulders, it ain't no weight at all. I only know what love must bear when fortune cries. I will be there. And when you're down, I'll break your fall. 'Cause the weight on my shoulders, it ain't no weight at all. Put the weight on my shoulders. See your star, how it shines. 'Cause there's so many dreams yet to find. Put the weight on my shoulders. Put the weight on my shoulders. On my shoulders.
Thank you, Jim. That was wonderful. Brother Raymond Fitz, in Dad's words, is a very special friend. He served as University of Dayton president for 23 years and is currently the head of the Fitz Center for Leadership in Community as the Father Faree Professor of Social Justice. Today, Brother Fitz will offer the invocation. Brother Fitz.
It was a great privilege to work with Jerry on the Board of Trustees and to really see his energy and concern for the excellence of the academic programs and our athletic programs. So I'm very privileged to do this invocation. Let us bow our heads in prayer. Good and gracious God, we give thanks for the many gifts that you have bestowed upon us. Today we come before you to celebrate the life and many accomplishments of Jerry Vanderhorst. We give thanks for the many gifts we have been given through Jerry's life and work. We celebrate through stories and remembrance of his commitment to excellence and his warmth and generous presence among us. We will have many good stories of life in St. Joe's Hall and about his accomplishments as a Hall of Fame football player at the University of Dayton. We also celebrate his dedication to family as a husband, a parent, a grandparent, and a great-grandparent. We give thanks for his and generosity to the church and to his university. Jerry was a great man of Christian faith, hope, and love. We give thanks for the way Jerry was able to assist so many people through his gifts as an insurance and financial services professional. We ask you to continue to bless Jerry's University of Dayton so that the UD community will continue to educate young women and men that, like Jerry, will carry a spirit of learning, leadership, and service into the future. May this spirit that Jerry has given us enrich the lives of our students so that they may be great family persons and professionals and promote generous service to their communities, their church, and to the University of Dayton. We ask you to fill our hearts with joy as we share many stories about Jerry. May these stories and your spirit uplift our lives to excellence and service like that of Jerry. We now ask you to bless the food we share and those who have prepared it and serve it. May it give us courage to build a world, one that Jerry wished for, where everyone is welcome as a friend, where no one goes without food, and all have the opportunity to live with dignity. Father, we ask this blessing through Jesus Christ, our risen Savior, and in your Spirit. Amen.
We're going to get rolling here. Steve, I probably don't have the voice for a memorial service, do I? The voice of celebration, absolutely. Well, I can't tell you how much our family appreciates everybody coming today. I've had an opportunity to float around and visit with some of you. And, I relayed the fact that when Dad was in his final months, Mom and Dad and I sat and talked, and Mom had explained to Dad that if you get buried in Dayton, I'm never going to get to see you because I'm staying in Florida where it's warm. And so Dad said, okay, I'll go along with that, but I want to have a memorial service. And I want to have a celebration of you, not him, of you. And what you really have to understand is that Dad helped to put together the list of all the people that were going to be here. And the invitations that went out were specifically to have people that he really cared about to join us in celebrating his life. So it was a very nice thing and I appreciate that, Bruce. And so this is something that meant a lot to Dad, and we're so glad that you're here to share it with us. You know, my dad loved the University of Dayton. He loved education, and he made it a priority in all of our family's lives. After Dad's passing, it shouldn't surprise you that the University of Dayton went to the Elite Eight. Dad got up there. You know, I always said that, it was always said that wherever Dad sat, that was the head of the table. Well, he actually has influence in areas that I didn't even realize, but it was a pretty cool thing to watch him do that. And I know that Mom and I sat down and had a lot of laughs about what he was able to help us do. And you tell that coach over at UD that he's welcome, all right? My dad was a friend of the university, and the university was very much a friend to my father. I want to thank President Curran, who was here earlier, who's been down to visit with my father, has meant a lot to us. Tim Wobbler. Tim, we've played golf, and it's been really a great thing. For 15 years, you've come down to spend time with my dad, and it certainly was appreciated and recognized. Brian Tracy and his wife here today, and of course, Brother Fitz, who spent so many years with my dad and meant so much to our family. Thank you very much for being here today. Dad's love of the university and his love of mentoring young people is the thing that he shared with Mike Kelly. Mike was the head coach at the University of Dayton for 27 years. He is in the College Football Foundation Hall of Fame. He is, and this is kind of cool, if you look at winning percentages, over 27 years, his winning percentage was .819%. That is third amongst all coaches in the NCAA with over 25 years. One of the most successful, absolutely. One of the most successful college football coaches ever. And my father specifically asked that Michael get up and say a few words on behalf of the university. So Michael, without further ado, Coach Mike Kelly, come on up.
I'd first like to thank Janet and the Vanderhorst family for allowing me to share a few thoughts and a few words, and it's very, very touching to have this opportunity to celebrate Jerry's life with all of his friends and the people that are assembled here this afternoon. Jerry Vanderhorst touched each one of us, and each one of us has a Jerry Vanderhorst story or two. I heard 4 or 5 of them at my table, and I'm sure across the room there were others that were told today. Most of us are aware, as Rick stated and Brother Ray stated, his deep love and commitment to the University of Dayton, specifically his Catholic faith and his University of Dayton athletics and football. A student athlete, an alum, a fan, a Board of Trustees member, a Hall of Fame member, and a financial supporter. A very dear friend, and as Rick said, a mentor to many of us. Jerry loved a good meal, and he loved to tell the stories at that meal. Very seldom did you ever get a chance to tell your story. And that was okay. I remember the last time that Tim and I were down with Janet and Jerry having dinner at a beautiful restaurant. Jerry started to tell the story. Janet reached over and pinched me, and she said, "Repeat, repeat." She just kept smiling, and I thought, wow, isn't that special? I'd like to share with you a couple of my Jerry Vanderhorst stories. A common phrase heard around our athletic offices over the years when it came to discussing ticket sales and promotions was the Vanderhorst model. Many of you know what I'm talking about. I heard the model 5 minutes ago right over there with his son. Just yesterday, Tim Wobbler, our Vice President and Director of Athletics, shared the Vanderhorst model with our management team on a working retreat, the same one. A number of us saw this model in action probably 25 years ago for the first time, at least the first time I had seen it. Our football season ticket sales was lagging. It needed a boost. Jerry took the bull by the horns. And we all know when Jerry takes charge, don't get in his way. If he believed in it, he was all in. And you were all in as well. He would study it, he would evaluate it, he would make a decision and never waver on that decision. I think it was probably some of that St. Mary's influence that carried. Jerry called a dinner one evening down at Dominic's, one of the favorite places to many of us. He invited 8 of his very closest friends and UD football season ticket holders. So I expect you to be at the dinner. It was in the back room, kind of a dark area. And not only were those 8 supposed to be there, but they were to bring 2 friends as well. We had the spaghetti dinner. We had the garlic meatballs. We had the red wine. We were feeling pretty good. Jerry pulls out a box of hats, and he made up this, it was called Kelly's Crew. He said, any of you gentlemen like to have one of these hats? Oh, yeah, I like to have one. Everybody wanted one of those hats. Of course, he didn't really tell them what followed, but everybody wanted a hat. You could see the pyramid starting to build, the model. Jerry reaches in his pocket, pulls out one of those big Cuban cigars. Yeah, you remember those, Janet? Ooh, I can't imagine what your dry cleaning bill was for that. Jerry Vanderhorst had us all in a circle. Garlic, meatballs, spaghetti, wine, cigar smoke starting to cloud up the room, puffing on those things, and he went right down the line. How many season tickets are you going to sell? 20. Kelly, he said 25. Write it down. Write it down. Then go to the next one. 15. Kelly, write it down. 25. Boom, 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 boom. Right down the line we went. And if he didn't like it, he'd blow a little of that Cuban cigar smoke in your face. Think again. Not only did we do all that, but we had to report out every 2 weeks on that goal chart how we were doing. I hear some chuckles in the group. You've all been there. Every 2 weeks, you could expect a call from Vandy on where you at with your season ticket sales. And then at the end of the 2 months process, if they didn't reach their goal, guess what? They had to buy those tickets themselves. The Jerry Vanderhorst model. Many of you have been to Jerry and Janet's homes. They had a beautiful home, and still, I think they still own it in West Kettering. Beautiful place. Beautiful grounds, woods, decks all around it, flower gardens. I know Janet misses that. I know she enjoys Florida in the winter, but I know she enjoyed that home. Jerry and Janet were getting along to where it was getting very difficult to maintain those grounds in the summer. And they both loved their flowers. So Jerry came to me and Janet came to me and said, would it be possible to maybe hire one of your football players that's going to stay here in the summer as a yard boy for the summer? I said, certainly. We're always looking for employment for our football players. As it moved along, it became the job to get if you were a football player. one of the gentlemen right here, Brian Tracy, who's dear friends with Janet and Jerry and attended their weddings, and Meredith, just the relationship's been unbelievable. Brian was able to hang on to that job for 2 summers. Now, I never asked many questions. Compliance was just kind of starting. So I didn't really ask much, but I did know that Jerry and Janet were paying probably $1 or $2 above the going rate for a yard boy. But one thing I found out was most important, more importantly than the money that they made hourly, but Janet prepared a gourmet lunch every day for that yard boy. And Brian told me, Janet, he'd learned to play that out. You'd ring the bell at 11:30, drop the flowers, drop the weeds, come on in. And he asked enough questions and got Jerry talking. That might go to 1:30, 11:30 to 1:30. And if they got a lot of flowers planted that week, Jerry might take you out to play golf Friday afternoon. Again, I didn't ask any questions, but that's the way it worked. I wish I could share with you the various programs and projects that Jerry and Janet supported for our institution and for our football program. They would always insist that they did not want recognition, and I'm going to continue that honor today in Jerry's behalf. Student athlete, an alum, a fan, trustee member, Hall of Famer, financial supporter, huge heart, a loyal friend, and a mentor, Jerry Vanderhorst. Thank you.
Mike, thanks so much. You know, my dad, one of the things I always admired about him was he was an individual that never fell victim to the trappings of success. He was someone who believed in the invisible things: love of your God, pride of accomplishment, love of your family. And he always told me that if you're going to go out and you're going to collect anything, it should be relationships. It should be friendships. And today, the room is filled with many longtime friends. I sit here and I look down at Don Wydell, who was as close a friend as my dad had in the business. They worked together for many, many years, and Don and Scott and I and Tom and Terry used to go hunting in Mexico, and I got some great jokes from Don there. Unfortunately, I can't share any of them here today, but Don, it's so great having you here. Don LaChance, who worked with my dad going on 50 years, Don? 42 years. And Don came down from Wisconsin. He and Barbara were just wonderful friends of my mom and dad's. And I know Tom and Steve and all their kids. And, you know, this is a multi-generational thing that really means a lot. I know that I saw Cleet Oberst walk in earlier, and Cleet's a great friend of my dad's, and someone that meant an awful lot to my dad. As a matter of fact, when my dad was brought into the Football Hall of Fame here at the University of Dayton, he had Art Bach, who gave the commencement speech. Art, thank you so much. A great friend. Let's give him a hand. He's a real special guy in our family. Also, Fred Miller. Fred and I and Dad and Paul Thiesing used to go to lunch together down in Florida and tell lies. And Bob Schimmel, who tormented my father with West Virginia University stories, is here today. And it's just great having you people here. The friends that Dad accumulated were many. If he sat down and if he looked at the real gem, he would tell you that one of the most valuable friends he's ever had in his life was Dave Rushing. They had a tremendous mutual admiration for each other. David was my dad's partner. Much of the success that we had in business had to do with David's leadership. He had tremendous loyalty, not only to my dad, but to everybody in the family. He is one very special guy. and it would just be inappropriate not to have him speak. And my dad asked him to come up and say a few words today. Come on up, David.
Well, this is wonderful. And to back up Mike Kelly's story, I have to tell you, Bob Schimmel back there was the leading Kelly's Crew salesman. Where are you, Bob? Oh, he's over there. Oh, okay, he's over there. And I was on Kelly's Crew too, by the way. Yeah, we had a lot of fun. Ladies and gentlemen, it's very nice to be here. It's my pleasure to help honor Jerry Vanderhorst, and it's been looking forward for a few weeks to get together with all of you, and I'm speaking today on behalf of my family and the Penn Life family. It's very sizable here today. I mean, there's so many Penn Life family people here today, and they meant so much to Jerry over the years. And the office girls, yes, they held everything together for us. And excuse me, the Aganis Club, they're back there, and that was Jerry's favorite club. He loved Mondays because we have meetings on Mondays. We have special meetings on some evenings throughout the year with special speakers. And Jerry was a past president of the club, and everybody really enjoyed being around him. And I like to, all the rest of the people helped in one way or the other with Jerry. He appreciated everyone. He was just a very, very, very special man. How it all started with Jerry and I in 1961 or 62, I'm not sure, but in another company, we had a big meeting up in Dubuque, Iowa, and it was my first manager's meeting with the other company, and I was a rookie, and I was nervous and scared to death, and and that sort of thing. And they had 4 speakers at that big function and big meeting, and Jerry Vanderhorst was one of those speakers. And I have to tell you, he made a big imprint that day. Everybody, it was really, really something. He got my attraction. Jerry talked about helping other people, and that's what he was so good at. Everyone he touched or came in touch with, he helped them, and he helped their families. And he just had a certain knack of communicating and dealing with those people, and it was really something. Anyway, he got my attention. He talked about helping his salespeople. He talked about, now I was a rookie. Now he was a level 3 or 4 manager. He'd already been in the business 6 or 7 years or something like that at that time. And I was just a rookie, and but he talked about the company. He talked about the products. He talked about the good, and he talked about honesty and integrity and love and caring for everybody, and it just gave you a good, warm feeling on a first impression with a talk from him. It was really special. Jerry, at that time, supervised parts of several states, and after that meeting, he kept growing with the company, and he expanded and expanded, and needless to say, he was one of the very best of the company. And he got promoted to another level, which encompassed Martian, where we live down in the Quad City area, in our area. So I had the opportunity to work with Jerry over a period of time. And I have to tell you, it was just a matter of a few weeks or a few months. All of my salespeople and myself, we got in touch. We felt the leadership with Jerry. It was just special. Pretty soon they were doubling their sales. Now, in sales, when you double your sales, what happens to your income? You double your income too, don't you? Well, everybody just kept growing and growing and growing, and the confidence level kept getting better and better and better and better. And came a time where he got a huge promotion, just a huge promotion, and he deserved it. He deserved it because he was a tremendous influence on everybody he came in touch with. And our company kept growing and doing very well. And then later on, however, we got new home office management, and everything's changed, and things started going downhill with that company. And with Jerry's integrity and everything, he just couldn't work there. He resigned. He says, that's enough. So we kept talking on the phone back and forth, and he was in Dayton, Ohio, and I was in the Quad City area. And one day he says, hey, I think I've come across something that's kind of special. He says, you should come out and take a look at it. I said, oh, sure, because I trusted him 100%. I mean, my God, what he had done for me and my family and everybody. I said, oh, my golly, and our salespeople. So I came out, took a look at the business, and a lot of good things happened on that visit. I came in touch with the rest of the Vanderhorst family, the children, and I saw in them the same thing that I saw in Jerry and Janet, just special people, and really fun to be around, and good quality. And today, I don't have to tell you because you already know, but they're so successful, and they've done so many good things, and it's just a really, really good story with Jerry and Janet. Anyway, I called Marcia, my wife, in Bettendorf, Iowa, and I said, Marcia, sell the house. We're moving to Dayton, Ohio. And of course, she says, what's going on? I told her, and she says, okay. And so I came out and stayed with Jerry and Janet and the family, and got started in the business. And Marcia moved out here a couple months later, and that was 1973. And we started from scratch, actually. But Jerry had such a vision. He, like Rick said, like he could see down the road 2 years. He could see things happening 5 years. If you did this and this and this, that's going to happen. He had such a vision. And we started down on Kettering Boulevard with a small office. We outgrew that after a few months. And then pretty soon we kept getting promoted. And he became the #1 manager in the company and vice president of the company. And it was really, really special. But talking about Jerry just for a moment, most of you already know these facts, but he was an Eagle Scout, St. Mary's High School Hall of Famer, UD Hall of Famer, drafted by the Los Angeles Rams, international skeet shooter. You know what international is? That's pretty big. And he was a great golfer and tennis player. We had so much fun. And along with the Aganis Club and everything else, we had so many good stories. I just can't tell you all of them. But it was just terrific. I'm running out of time, but with our company, Jerry and Janet had their August 12th anniversary, wedding anniversary every year, and we go down to French Lick or someplace. And that was one of our favorite places. We had there's a lot of people in the room today who attended those. We had a lot of good times. And one day we were out there playing golf, and just tell you a short story. Dean Riddle and Jerry, and we playing golf, and we were following Larry Bird and his brother and 2 other guys. And the foursome in front of them got held up. So we caught up with Larry Bird and you know, the Hall of Famer basketball player. And, of course, he was a really nice guy. We had a conversation with him. And Dean Riddle, my manager from Mansfield, he was about my size. He came over to Larry and he said, Larry, can I ask you a question? He's looking up at him. Larry, can I ask you a question? He said, yeah, what? He said, how come you're so tall? Well, Larry looked down at him and he says, how come you're so short? But anyway, Larry was a nice guy, and he had his own basketball court down there, and most of you remember all those things. But I know I'm out of time, but we had so many good stories in the Vanderhorst family, and Marcia and I and son Dave. And I just tell you one other thing about Jerry. He just cared so much for anybody and everybody he came in contact with. And 4 years ago this month, our son Brian had an unexpected, heart attack and passed away. And Jerry was the first guy that got on the phone, contacted all of our people, and told them about the funeral arrangements and everything. I mean, he just had such a loving, caring heart. We just loved him to death. And I can't say enough for him today. He's just really special. Thank you very much.
Thanks, David. He loved you as much as anyone I know. You know, my dad's second family were those people that he was in business with. It was a relationship built on common goals, sweat, and a desire to make those individuals and their families more successful in life. Late in his career, he and I were sitting there having lunch one day, and I asked him a question. I said, Dad, at this stage in your career, what are your goals? I mean, what are you trying to accomplish? And he said something very interesting to me. He said that what he wanted to do was build the greatest sales organization in the world, and then know that every person that worked for him was a much better human being than they ever were a salesman. I look out now, and I see Rick Fromling, I see Tom Smaxwell, I see Jess Rokas, Suter Smith, so many of the people that we work with. And I'm quite sure that my dad is gratified to know that he accomplished that goal. Because as good a salespeople as you guys are, you're much better human beings. And I congratulate you on that. I will tell you, it takes some big shoes to fill his shoes in an organization like ours. And we were very fortunate that we had an individual in Steve Gaffney who worked with my dad for over 20 years and has been with us every step of the way, being mentored by my father and working with every one of you. His leadership, his integrity, his business ethics have moved him into a position where he's now the CEO and president of Penn Global. He was like a son to my mom and my dad. He's certainly like a brother to me. I'm very proud to call him my partner, and I'd like to have Steve Gaffney come up and say a few words. Steve?
Someplace I never thought I would be, and I don't mean Dayton. Kathy and I brought two daughters here to look at the school, so we've had the tour. Our oldest chose University of Notre Dame, not a bad decision, and our youngest fell in love with a little school in Oxford, Ohio, on the way over here, so she wound up going to Miami. But really, I've always felt strong ties. We're from the St. Louis area, and I think we represent University of Dayton pretty strong from St. Louis. I don't have any notes with me today for a reason, because my role as the spokesperson, at least today, for so many people that are sitting in the back and are at meetings this weekend with us in Cincinnati. I guess they've heard everything I have to say, so I'm going to speak to the rest of you. But I should start by saying, Janet, thank you for sharing Jerry with us all these years. To the children. To the children and grandchildren, son-in-laws, daughter-in-laws, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, thanks a lot. I'm just going to take a minute and tell you, I answered a newspaper ad. I don't know if many people can relate to that, but I had graduated from college. I had spent 2 years in the United States Army. I had married my high school sweetheart and was sitting in an apartment in my hometown of St. Charles, Illinois, going through 60 pages of want ads in the Chicago Tribune. looking for something to jump out and smack me upside the head. And a single ad grabbed me. And Michael Mitzen knows the ad very well because about 11 months later it grabbed him, and thanks. My mother, who had watched her second son be the first member of our family ever to graduate from college, had a definitive plan for me, and it wasn't commission sales. And it wasn't commission sales in those days where we traveled Monday through Friday, we paid our own expenses. We got in our car at 5 o'clock in the morning on Monday and came home about 10 o'clock at night on Friday. That wasn't what she had in mind. When she went to Bridge Club and told her friends what her son was doing, a devout Catholic, but I think my mother was lying just a little bit because when I would see them sometimes on weekend, they didn't seem to be talking about the same job that I had. The first managers meeting that Michael and I ever attended was the first time I met Jerry Vanderhorst. And I got to tell you something. I'm not proud of this. It's just a statement of fact. I really wasn't 2 feet in the business at that point. I was earning a living. It's what I was doing on Monday morning until Friday night, but I wasn't 2 feet in. But there at that meeting in Chicago, Mr. Vanderhorst walked in the door. From the moment he walked in the door, there was validation for me. If a man like that chose to do this with that company, then I was in the right place. And now, 40 years later, I've never looked back. But my relationship with Jerry is different than a lot of people in the room because, yes, I believe he took an interest in me. But my mother raised a son to question things. My mother loved to argue. See, my dad would travel, and when he was home, we couldn't argue. That's not what kids did. But my mother, I'm telling you, when the young ones were in bed, it was 10 o'clock at night, my mother would love it when I'd come down after studying. I'm in high school, and I would just sit there, and we would talk politics, we'd talk religion. Oh, the veins in her neck would be sticking out. She'd get so mad at me when I questioned anything about religion. And Jerry and I developed that relationship. And I saw the veins in his neck stick out just a few times. I saw the thing in the middle of the forehead, like, where do you come from? But he always would listen. And he would always give me what he believed to be his best advice. Jerry's so loyal to his salespeople. I got to tell you, Jess Rokas was sharing a story with me last night. Jess is with the company longer than I am. Jess is a legend with us in the Mid-South region. Jess was talking about the fact that, so many years ago, we had an executive vice president of the old PennCorp financial days. Our home offices are out in Santa Monica, California. And this guy is a British guy. His name was Les Moss. And Les Moss had sent a letter to Jess questioning something that Jess and his management team were doing. And so Jess picked up the phone right away and he called Jerry Vanderhorst, and Jerry said, read it to me. And so Jess read the letter to Jerry, and Jerry said, I want you to right now, I want you to sit down and I want you to write a letter of reprimand to Les Moss. And Jess was the nicest guy in the world. Jess says, I can't do that. He's an executive vice president. And Jerry said, and I quote, and Rick, you can relate to this, he said he's a clerk. Now send the letter. Michael Mitzen and I, years ago, we're looking to have a function someplace where we can bring our Chicago people and our Washington, D.C. people and our St. Louis people to a spot. And so, as clever as we are, we went to a map and we chose Dayton, Ohio. And Dave Rushing and the guys said, yeah, you can use the offices on a Saturday. And so we came over on Saturday. We had the meetings. Dave, you spoke at our meeting. We'll never forget it, how great it was. And Rick and Tom were over. But after the meeting was over, and Janet, I don't know if you remember this, you had not too long before that moved into your beautiful new home. And you asked all of us to come to the house where Jerry was outside in this midsummer day, and he was cooking these burgers, like Lumburgers or something. It was like some special recipe, And I mean, he wouldn't let anybody near it, Oh no, I say, can I help you? No, you can't do this. You don't qualify to do this. And he was out there, perspiration just dripping off him. He was feeding his troops. And Michael and I stayed afterwards after everyone else had left. We were in the kitchen with Janet and Jerry. And I got to tell you something. I don't think I ever felt more comfortable in my entire life. One night at the Greenbrier, Jerry, the cigar, but that's a good one. Jerry's out there with that. I don't remember a Cuban cigar, but I remember it being a stinky cigar, if that's okay for me to say. And Jerry and I are talking. And he said, okay, and he's take deep puff in the cigar. He said, what are we going to talk about tonight? I said, Jerry, let's talk about your deal. And I've talked to Rick about this for many times over the years. He said, he just looks at me and says, well, what would you like to know? I said, I'd like to know how I can get it. And Jerry said, oh, you want my deal? I said, yeah, I want your deal. And Jerry said, well, you can have it. It's the first one I ever won, Rick. I swear to you. Terry, maybe you know the feeling, but I'd not won any at that point. I went back to my room. I'm high-fiving myself. I never heard back from Jerry on that one, I'll tell you. The guy was bigger than life. He's the best combination of brains and brawn I've ever met. I mean, think about it. Most of us in sales, our responsibility is to teach someone how to go out and make a presentation. We were talking about it last night. You can't teach anyone the courage. A lot of us played sports and take certain courage to do some things. But I got to tell you, when you're sitting in your car and you've got an insurance kit in your hand and you got to open the door to that car and you got to walk up to that door and you got to knock on that door. And if you're lucky enough that they're there and then they let you in, then you've got to maneuver them to the kitchen table. Then you've got to make a presentation. It's mind-boggling. Tom's looking at me like nothing to it. Well, Jerry Vanderhorst, he came into our business and he took over this product called Safe Drivers and this division called Instant Issue. I mean, it had been sitting on the shelf for years until Jerry, I told Stanley Barrow, well, I can do that. And then he did this insane thing. He said, we're going to build it around 16 presentations a day. Now, I just told you what it's like to do one. Imagine the thought of having to do that 16 times every day. So the first time they asked me about it, like I get a vote, right? I said, that's nuts. Built the biggest sales organization in the United States of America. Stanley Byer said to me one day, he said, you still don't believe it, do you? I said, I can't believe it. I don't believe anybody can make 16 presentations a day. The chairman of the board of the company, Jerry was vice chairman in those days. They were a great partnership, weren't they, Rick? He said to me, I want you to get in your car. I want you to drive to Indianapolis. I want you to go over and see Tom and Rick, and I want you to go to the field and spend one day with either one of them. So I got in my car, I go to Indianapolis. Tom says, come on, you're coming with me today. At 9 o'clock, we left the office. Tom says to me, I don't know what's going to happen today, Steve, but when we're finished tonight about 7 o'clock, you will have seen 16 presentations. And at 7 o'clock that night, we had made 16 presentations. He'd made 8 sales. You see, Jerry was bigger than life. Once Jerry had figured out by sharpening those pencils, once he had figured out that's what it took, it didn't matter to him how much effort was involved. It took 16 presentations to make X number of sales for a salesperson to earn a living, and so the rule was 16 presentations. Bigger than life. He taught me how to become a businessman. This migration to Naples, Florida, that you hear so much about. See Leighton, Elliott, and Bobby. Welcome to the club, you guys. It all started right here. Her and me, 1989. Today, the magic number of the number of couples who have followed us somehow, the domino effect, I'm not saying they all came down there because of Steve and Kathy, is 78, of which I'm proud that Jerry and Janet were amongst that club. On behalf of all of us who earn our living with a presentation kit in our hands, I am proud to tell you, we're not here. We certainly haven't accomplished what we accomplished without Jerry Vanderhorst. Dave's right. He loved us. He took care of us every day. Kathy and I are real lucky. We were down in Naples towards the end, and I'll never forget just 3 Sundays, I think, before Jerry passed away. Kathy and I were over with Jerry, and game is on, and he's talking, and Rick's on the bed and talking like he always does, and Jerry's kind of doing Muhammad Ali, trying to get him, I'm going to get him. And Kathy, who I'm very proud of, is the Hospice Volunteer of the Year 2 years ago in the state of Missouri. And she's saying all the right things. She's holding his hand, and I'm thinking, you know what? I don't know how it happened or when it happened, but as a couple, we fell in love with this man, and we fell in love with his wife. We're the luckiest people on the face of the earth. We will make him proud. We will continue to build our company in his memory. Rick and Terry, and I can't tell you how much it means to me, we've moved into some new offices in St. Louis, and the first thing that they told me they wanted to do was to have Jerry's trophy, the Eagle, come to St. Louis and be in the headquarters. And when the first time I walked in the office, I saw this spot, and I said, it's a perfect place for it. It's right where it has to be. And I know that the process has already begun to have that shipped to St. Louis so that we can have it. It means every single morning I walk in that office, the first person I'm going to think about is J.P. Vanderhorst. And there isn't anything that would make me prouder and make me happier. Thanks for letting us share a little time with you today. To all of you back there, we got a big job to do. I appreciate your support, but let's get it done. Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Terry. Thanks, everybody. So long.
Thanks, Steve. I sat down because we're down to the last speaker, me. And I told my brother Terry that when I get up here, I'll get a standing ovation. And he said, there's no way. Now watch this. Mom, can you come up for just a minute, please? Come on up. Come on up. Talking that thing right there.
Okay. I certainly cannot follow all the speakers beforehand, and they said everything I want to say. So I do want to thank each and every one of you for coming to today's memorial. This is one of the things that Jerry really wanted, and he said, and I want you to do a great job on it, so I hope I did a great job. Even though we live in Florida, that's because the weather's nicer than up here, you know that. And Jerry could not get around anymore because he's been in a wheelchair for about 4 years. And I took care of him at home because he did not want to go to a nursing home. He said, do not put me in a nursing home. So I got the equipment I needed to take care of him at home right up until 4 days before he died when he went to hospice. And I'm very proud of what I did, and only God helped me to do it, that's for sure. One of the things that he enjoyed most in the last 3 or 4 years we were down there is listening to the football games and the basketball games by way of Mike Kelly and Larry Hanskin for the football, and Bucky Bockhorn and Larry Hanskin. And we were glued to the computer. Now, I'm not computer literate, but I do know how to get WHIO Radio Live. And we listened, and that brought Dayton close to us because Jerry was unable to travel anymore. And that was his biggest thing, that he couldn't walk anymore, and it was hard on him. But he kept good spirits. A real example of that is 5 days before he died, I had gotten him up out of bed, and he sat down, and he slumped way over, and I thought, oh my God, he's dying right now. And I called 911, and we took him to the hospital, and I followed about 10 minutes later. I walked into the room, and here he's flirting with all the nurses. I mean, so what do you do? But anyhow, he loved life, he lived it to its fullest, and he made everything wonderful for the family and us. When we started out and first got married, we only had $125 to our name. We lived on love, you know. And but then He worked hard, and with God's help, here we are. Thank you very, very much for coming. It was such a joy to see everybody. And I know that he's up there watching and enjoying it too. Thank you very, very much.
Great. Thanks, Mom. I also, before I get started, I want to thank Bob Stackler, Chuck Hewer, Tom DeLuca. All you guys have been such great friends from St. Mary's, and Tom has been such a inspiration for helping us through a lot of this, and it's really great to have you guys here to share the day with us. When about Christmas time, I walked into the house one day, and my daughter Elizabeth's there. And she walks up to me as I come through the front door, and she goes, Mom just told us that she loves us more than you. And I said, what? And James comes out and he goes, oh yeah, she said it. She loves us more than you. And I looked at Leslie and I said, Leslie, what is going on? And she's like, I love you. I love the kids too. And I got to tell you something though. If you asked my dad who he loved more, he would say, your mother. Straight out. I can always have more kids. There's only one Janet. That's the way it was. As is evidenced by Jerry and Steve showing up at the end. The fact is that my dad could never have loved anyone more than he loved my mom. It's not possible. It's not possible. They were completely devoted to each other. And Mom referred to the last 4 years when Dad was in a wheelchair, and Leslie and I sat down on many occasions and said, Mom, what are you doing? No one can do this. And she would say to me, Jesus is there to help me. Don't worry about it. And I sat down and I looked at a relationship that was completely built in love, and it moved from absolute commitment to dedication, and then towards the end, it became inspiration. You sit down and you watch the way that my mom was there for my father. And by the way, my sister-in-laws, my brothers, my sister, all of them were great. But the way that my mom was there to help him, and the way that he just glowed whenever she walked into the room, the way that he looked at her, it became inspirational. It was something that you sat down and said to yourself, I have got to try to love my spouse. I've got to try to love somebody as much as my dad loved my mom. And Mom, it was inspirational, believe me. We really appreciated it. I have 6 brothers. I've got 4 brother and sister-in-laws. I've got 11, Mom had 11 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. And the thing that always amazed me the most is if you got them alone privately, every one of them would say, well, you know, I'm actually Grandpa's favorite. I'm actually Dad's favorite, you know. Every kid thought that they were Dad's favorite. And that was his magic. The fact is, his gift was the ability to connect with you on a private level. He was always mentoring, always guiding you, always helping you out, even to the very end. When Mom talked about the day that Dad went down, she called me. I was at breakfast with Steve, and she said, I think we've lost your dad. And we went screaming to the hospital. We showed up there. He was flirting with the nurses. Okay. And we walk in, and my dad, because he was always mentoring, always guiding you, my daughter Elizabeth walked up. She's standing next to him. She puts his hand on his arm and says, Grandpa, I'm here. And my dad opened his eyes, and he looked at her, and he said, get a man. And my sister-in-law, Maria, is standing there, and she goes, did he just say get a man? And I'm like, I think he did. But That was my dad. That was my dad. All the way to the end, he was there to give you advice, trust me. The last couple weeks, we were sitting there, and by the way, this was a inspirational process. We really saw him passing through. I know that in the last couple weeks, he was having conversations with Chip and Marie, his mom and dad, and so I know that they were there to greet him and meet him. I know how much he loved Mom's parents, Albert and Hilda. Albert, for those of you that don't know it, was the guy that actually introduced my father to cigars, okay? Hilda, my grandmother, if you talk to my dad, he will tell you that nobody in the history of the world has done more to destroy the English language than my grandmother, Hilda. He loved to tell the story of when he and Mom were first married. They get into a car, and they're driving with my grandparents up to Sandusky, Ohio. It's a Sunday morning. They go through one of these small little towns. They pull onto the main street, and about 4 blocks up, you see these 2 little old gals with their Bibles, and they're getting ready to cross the street to go to the church on the other side. And they see my dad coming, and they step back up on the curb. And they patiently wait as my dad drives the 4 blocks to pass them. And as he passes them, my grandmother taps him on the shoulder and says, Jerry, don't you know that Presbyterians have the right of way? And she was amazing. I'm sure they're with him too. My dad, because we talked about all this, my dad said, that you got to do me one favor. And I said, what's that? And he said, do not tell that joke. There's a joke, and he said, you cannot tell the joke. Brother Fitz is in the crowd. You cannot tell the joke. So here goes. The Pope is sitting in his office in the Vatican, and a nun walks into his office and says, Your Holiness, there's a gentleman here from St. Louis, Missouri, that says that he needs to see you. And the Pope says, well, bring him in. So the guy comes in, and he introduces himself as Brad Miller. He says he's with a company called Anheuser-Busch. And he's been authorized by that company to give the Catholic Church $250 million. Well, the Pope looks at him and says, well, that's a very generous offer. Typically, when people want that, they want something in return. And the guy says, well, as a matter of fact, you know that prayer, the Our Father? And the Pope says, yeah, I know it. And he says, well, you know where it says, give us this day our daily bread? And he said, well, yeah. And he says, well, we just need you to change one word. Give us this day our daily bud. And the Pope says, I can't do that. And he says, 400 million. He says, I couldn't possibly. He says, 500 million, last offer, I'll be back Monday. Well, he leaves. Well, that Sunday, the Pope gets all the cardinals together at the Vatican, and he says, guys, I've got good news and I've got bad news. And one of the cardinals says, well, what's the good news? He says, there's a company that wants to give us $500 million. He said, what's the bad news? He says, I think we're going to lose the Wonder Bread account. So, Brother Fitz, the Jesuits would have laughed at that. I just want you to know that, okay? I'm not a terribly religious guy. As a matter of fact, there's a group of guys at that back table there that are probably surprised that I didn't spontaneously combust as I walked onto the campus. But the reality is that after going through this, I can tell you that I absolutely believe in life in the hereafter. It is completely, utterly inconceivable that I'm never going to talk to my dad again. It is beyond my comprehension to think that I'll never see him again. It is beyond any reason to believe that my mom and my dad won't spend eternity together. And with the caveat that we end up in the same place, I feel that same way about my wife. I'd like to think that there's a reason behind all this. And it was funny when it happened, Steve called me, and he asked how I was doing. And I told him, I said, Steve, I had 62 years with this guy as my dad. I worked with him every day for 15 years, and I was blessed that I had he and my mom down in Florida with us, Terry and Chris, for another 15 years. And I said, if there's any solace, it's knowing that there was nothing left unsaid. Well, that was naive, because I can tell you, after a few months, that was completely false. You can never tell an individual how much you love them. You can never tell anybody how much they've meant to you and how much they've done for you, how much you've impacted other people's lives. And that is a lesson that every one of us should learn. Michael Mitzen, good family friend, wrote me a note right after it happened, and I think he put it best. He said, your dad will certainly be missed, but more importantly, he'll be remembered. And that is the truth. We can't thank everybody enough for being here. We love the concept that we were able to share this with you. My dad, when we talked about this, he asked us to bring everybody together, not to honor him, but rather to have you all together to tell you how much he cared about you. Thank you very much for all being here. We love you all. Get home safe, okay? Thanks a lot.